Welcome, everyone, to the present show. There's nothing like the present. This is a show about it. And today with us, we have a very special guest, Chris Dancy, who is labeled as the most connected man on the planet. Does that mean you have the most amount of Facebook friends or LinkedIn contacts?
The moniker most connected comes from, for about 11 years, I've been monitoring and managing my health, physical health, mental well-being, and behavior via an elaborate system of devices that watched me and then gave me feedback, whether that feedback was in the form of a push notification or lights changing colors when I'm upset, etc. It looks a lot like most people live today. Most people have reminders on their phones to leave for appointments, or if they have smart devices like watches, they'll tell them to stand up if they've sat too long. I was just kind of early to orchestrate my life as a database that could be queried and acted upon.
How your body behaves is also connected with also your mood and your feelings, and so it goes beyond the physical connection.
Correct. And I just did an article for Time Magazine talking a little bit about AI. And in that, I made the case that, if you look at the journey I took, it really wasn't even, one of hooking my body up first. The first things I watched were really social connections, things like LinkedIn, things like Facebook, because I realized I was more motivated by the feedback loops from those systems. Today, if you want to get kind of feedback from your friends, or at least noticed, because let's be honest, a lot of people are connected to hundreds, thousands of people. You almost have to tag a location, put a photo, use certain language, and maybe even add a feeling. And that's just a lot of exploitative data you have to create to even get your friends to notice some of the things you do. Unless you're connected to people, who curtail I only have so many friends on Facebook. I only have so many connections on LinkedIn. I just think if I connect to you digitally, I owe you my attention.
Your journey into mindfulness or awareness really started with, was it becoming more aware of yourself?
The first lane really was, this meta awareness of myself via these systems that connected to me. Let's be honest, right? It's not like I woke up one day and said, I'm just going to go to retreat. Right? That doesn't happen, right? There's a lot of starts and stops. But for me, I didn't have the starts and stops. I didn't try to meditate and then stop. I just literally started becoming more aware secondhand because, again, it was very painful to confront a lot of the ways that I thought systematically, just without even thinking. It just was a routine. It was more than a routine. It was like my firmware was smoke, drink, overeat, yell, spend money you don't have, make people feel small. I was in need of some serious kind of like, okay, how do I kind of deal with the mind? And that's when I found a group in Boulder called Buddhist Geeks. I just started a really easy practice, just, sitting 5 minutes here and there at conferences and meeting with these groups. But it got real in 2014 because, by that point I'd done a TED Talk, I'd been on the cover of magazines, I'd had a TV show shot, the whole bit, right? No book yet, but still it was pretty, crazy ascent. And that's when I tell people I kind of had what I would call a data PTSD, where I'd so weaponized the numbers of life against me that I was the opposite end of the spectrum. So now, instead of being surrounded by people who needed me to be in a certain state, I was surrounded by systems and numbers that actually kept pushing me forward. And I felt like I was evaporating. It was like ego death every 30 seconds. It was like, why am I thinking this way? I didn't even recognize my mind. And it took probably 2 years of that intensity of practice to come to some sort of equilibrium where eating a donut doesn't make me feel like I'm going to die, and skipping meditation doesn't make me feel like I'm evil.
Where do you find this balance in between what is outside you that is pushing and guiding you, information, your days and so on, and you, who you are, and your mind and everything else?
I started looking at the interactions between what was saved about me and what I had allowed to be returned to me. I could start to use location-based alerts for things that brought me more peace and reminding. So one of the first early ones I did was anytime I came home, I got a message that said, don't forget your family loves you. They could have had a stressful day. Check in with yourself before you go inside. So for me, what I noticed was technology by 2016 had become ridiculously optimized at making sure I didn't waste any time. But it also removed everybody. Right? Everything was just waiting for me as if it had been orchestrated by the cloud, everything from how I ate to like when I left for the airport, it was orchestrated. And yes, I was super efficient, but like I was not staying mindful. I was on autopilot, but super efficient. So, but again, by forcing friction into those to remind me to speak with people, or by leaving the house with only an Apple Watch, which forces me to pay for things with my wrist. And the idea was every piece of technology was going to be a way. And I made it my mission to make it a way to connect to other people in a way that I learned about myself. And then just outrageously simple things like switching all of the settings on all of my units to European. I'm American. So I'd have to see everything in Celsius. So anything that would involve taking a piece of information or technology and forcing me to slow down and be with it for a moment. I make sure my house and my environment and my body and my devices are full of constant reminders to either slow time or connect to others. Because if I slow time, I instinctively connect to others, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like if I have enough time, instinctively, it's just like in my body, I just know to talk to people. But if I feel rushed, I literally have to be reminded.
You just mentioned mindful cyborg. So could you quickly define what mindfulness is to you, and what is mindful cyborg or mindfulness cyborg?
Cyborg is, at its root, any organism just means living, right? So you can't be a cyborg you can't be a tape dispenser that's cybernetic. You have to be living, right? So any organism, so something living, that's augmented or enhanced by a piece of technology. Technology can be a book. If you're a Buddhist, the cushion is a piece of technology, right? So technology is a hard one. So when people hear cyborg, the first thing they think of is robot. When I hear cyborg, and if you do any research in cybernetics, you understand that it really is just organisms that are enhanced. Mindful cyborg is someone who moment by moment reduces bias to their input systems. I try to actively look at how I'm going to scan a situation, find the fastest way through it, and fix that problem. There's this thing that's dangerous right now when it comes to how we think about people with technology. We just automatically assume that they're not human. We automatically assume that they're not aware or that they're constantly distracted. And Nathan Jurgensen calls this digital duality. And I believe, in my experience, people who see me use a device or people who see anyone use a device suddenly make themselves superhuman and demote the person using the device to subhuman. We shame children like as if they're literally smoking crack if they're on their phones too much. And I think, again, technology, I understand, is not everybody's bag, but shame will kill a child faster than a gaming addiction.
I don't really want kids to really interpret the beauty of the world as non-interesting, because this little thing is way more interesting and made more fulfilling in that particular moment, right? So what would you say?
This is how I treat my children. So for our 8-year-old, our Alexa doesn't respond unless she says please and thank you, right? For our 8-year-old, when she wants to download a game, we take a screenshot of everyone we approve, and then once a week we sit down and go through all the screenshots and say, show me this game and how you're using it. For our 8-year-old, we have time limits not set up, but we have time barriers set up. So, you can't be on it in the middle of the night. We're sleeping, and it's going to be hard to keep track of that. So we use a lot of technology to manage our relationship with our child. We also have a world full of people that don't know how to interact with each other anymore. So my partner is a school teacher at a high school, and kids don't interact like I remember them interacting, but that doesn't mean they're less human, right? Doesn't mean they're differently human, right? So emojis and memes and GIFs and things are kind of how they share jokes. So I think, in the second leg, I also need to be a little bit flexible with how I practice humanness. I love talking to people about what catches their attention. For example, let's talk about the internet. Let's not even talk about like social media. Like I can't look at a news article without seeing the title. And if it's a title that interests me, that's why it's called clickbait. I know that I do this, right? Then the next thing I look at is like not even the article. I literally look at the date. If it's more than a week old, I skip it. A week, literally. you know how often you have to create content for me? I mean, there needs to be a whole factory just making new web pages for me if you want me to read stuff. And the third thing is I look at the length, right? And it's now articles that even tell you at the top how long it'll take to read. So, if it's not a good title, it's not less than a week old, and it's not 4 minutes or less with bold and pictures and no ads, I'm not going to eat. So again, I'm super aware of how attention works, at least my attention. And I love talking about that with other people, because I wish more people would say how easily they're influenced, because I think we'd feel less lonely. We wouldn't sneak to the bathroom to check our phones while we used the bathroom. We could just say, I'm really influenced because I'm waiting for an important email from my boss. That would start a whole conversation during dinner with someone you just met, than sneaking to the bathroom to check for the email from your boss.
What would be your way instead to live with the digital world, right? So, and to still feel in peace.
The concept of detoxing is dangerous, because if you're digitally detoxing, then what are you doing when you come back from vacation? Are you toxifying? I mean, again, I just don't like I don't like how it sits if you follow the train of thought all the way through. I love the idea of digitally detoxing. I like the idea, but I have to come back, right? Most people who need to detox are usually consumption addicts, not tech addicts. And consumption goes across the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Chris, it was great to have you on the show today. Lily, thanks for being. And have a mindful rest of the day.
Thank you, guys. And
it was a pleasure.
Don't forget to keep yourself in airplane mode.